summary. I will try to be better at moving slides forward, given that I'm from the Center for Innovative Human Systems and I can't even seem to operate a keyboard properly this morning. I'm going to talk a little bit about a research project that I was involved in that's concluded now. And the title of this presentation is Using a Serious Game to Understand Environmental and Financial Factors Affecting Home Appliance Repair Replace Decision-Making, Findings and Policy Implications. So I'm going to give some information about the project and the motivation for the project and kind of where it sits in terms of the right to repair. And then I'm going to go into some of the findings and some of the policy implications that we derived from those findings. So just to give some background as well, I work in Trinity College in Dublin. I'm a member of the Center for Innovative Human Systems. And we're located in the School of Psychology. And our kind of mantra is that systems and processes have to work for people, and they can only do this if the role of humans is central. So our mission is about improving performance, making sure that people are at the center of a process. And because of the centrality of humans to so many different aspects of modern life, we've worked in a lot of different sectors, and we have a lot of different themes to our research. And some of you will be familiar with the kinds of things that we've done in the past in lots of safety critical sectors and also in healthcare, aviation, surface transport, manufacturing. But we also have a branch on the left of the screen looking at sustainability, and we have a CPD course on sustainability and also on workplace well-being. So our reach is extending always. And the project I'm going to talk about today is one of those sustainability projects. So it is a European funded research project. So we have to talk about acronyms and a little bit about the actual topic. So evident is the name of the project. And anybody who has worked in European projects will know that the acronym is really important. So the title of the project is Behavioural Insights and Effective Energy Policy Actions. And it was responding to a topic that was published by the European Commission requesting research on socioeconomic research, non-energy impacts and behavioural insights on energy efficiency interventions. And we were a consortium of 9 partners. And you can see on the map there that there's a good spread across Europe. We have 3 universities, one which is kind of from the Faculty of Economics, then computer engineering, and ourselves from the kind of human, behavioral, social aspect. And crucially as well, on the top line, you can see in the logos there, we have the Joint Research Centre of the European Commission, and they are responsible for kind of informing policy at a European level. So that was good to have them involved. And we also had 2 energy providers, one in Sweden, CheckWatt, who provides services and technologies for prosumers. So they're people who make their own energy, usually using, in this instance, solar panels, and the state energy provider of Greece, PPC. So we had a lot of important stakeholders in the project. And the motivation for the project, and I'm not going to go into this in too much detail, but was around energy efficiency and helping households to considerably reduce energy consumption. All of this is to help Europe meet its targets to reduce energy consumption of 9%. And that was the directive from 2012, which was amended in 2018, and which informed the research policy to fund the research that we eventually did. And the reason that households were selected, you can see in the pie chart on the right, that households account for 28% of energy consumption in Europe, just behind transport, and ahead of, crucially, I think a lot of people would be surprised by that, ahead of industry. So there's a huge opportunity to leverage behavioral change in households if we're to meet the targets that we have at a European level. So our perspective in the project, and as human factors experts, is how can we change? How can we do things differently? And our perspective was that we can help consumers to easily make energy decisions when they want to, and by shaping informed consumers. So Even the research that I'm going to go and talk about, we did some usability studies. We found that like a lot of people were struggling. They were well-intentioned, if we want to say that. They want to make the right choice. They want to make the more energy efficient choice, but sometimes they're doing it in, life happens. You might have had a really bad day at work and your washing machine breaks that day, and you're sitting at the kitchen table with a computer in front of you trying to buy the machine that you can get tomorrow or the day after. So there are a lot of different stakeholders who have a role to play. It's not all down to one individual consumer making an energy choice. So there's governments involved, energy providers, society, media, all the rest, and obviously regulators and policy as well. So we were trying to tease apart the kind of role that each can play and how we can help consumers do what they want to do. We had a number of different pillars within the project around energy efficiency and behavioral biases. And one of the key things was to contribute to empirical research and to inform policy. And we decided that we were going to develop a serious game. Well, we wrote that into the proposal, so we had to do it. But the serious game, we decided to add the hook of the right to repair because it was very topical at the time, and the directive had just kind of come out. And here we were trying to help consumers save costs and facilitate a circular economy and energy efficiency. So just for those of you who mightn't be familiar with the EU Right to Repair Directive, I'm not going to go into too much detail, but it mandates manufacturers to provide access to spare parts, repair information, and tools. So they have to provide it for up to 7 to 10 years after a product is released. You will be able to, and you have to be able to access spare parts, repair tools. And all of that is to make it easier for you as a consumer to repair your broken machine, whatever it is, and for independent repair shops to be able to do it as well. So no obstructionism on the part of manufacturers who want you to buy a new machine, or on the part of high street retailers who just say, oh, you know what, you may as well just buy a new one, it'll be cheaper. So this is a really important initiative from Europe to lower electronic waste, or e-waste as it's called, generation. Okay, so that was kind of the context for the research. And as good human factors and agronomists, because we had a serious game, we were going to implement that with human participants. We examined the utility and the acceptability of the serious game and iteratively improved it. And if you want to scan the QR code there, you can have access to the paper we published on this. Together with Emma Delamere and myself, we were working on the project at the time. And I think somebody's going to put the link
I just have, Paul. Yeah, it's in the chat, the link to the
Okay.
paper. Yeah.
And Marie just put the link to the paper in the chat as well, so you should be able to follow up on that afterwards. And I'm not going to go into it in too much detail because I prefer to look at the findings, but here you can, and I should mention that the slides will be available on the website afterwards. So if anybody wants to go into more detail and look at them in detail, they can. Look at the paper, and my email address will also be at the end of the slide, so you can contact me if there's anything that isn't clear. But we had obviously a kind of a protocol for examining the serious game. I'll go into that in a little bit more detail. But it was a very useful exercise because it helped us to improve the game. It helped us confirm that a serious game structure may be appropriate. So that was good to know. And it helped us learn how to approach decisions with regards to appliances and how to formulate and change the game, because a lot of there was focus group discussions and there were surveys that we also used with a number of different groups in Dublin. And a lot of that was focusing on how people were like, I don't have time to always, research everything. I've got a busy life. It's not how can this be my responsibility? How can it be all on my shoulders that I'm responsible for saving the world? Am I? Like, there has to be somebody else who can help me, and there should be supports. That was the kind of feedback we were getting in group discussions. But in terms of the serious game itself, we obviously did a system usability scale, and we found improvements. If you look at the bottom left hand of the screen, we did one workshop in August, And then we did 4 workshops in September and 1 again in October. And the biggest improvement was between September and October. And that's because while we were running after each round of workshops, we were improving the game based on the feedback that we were receiving, and we were able to end up with something that really worked. I'm going to go into a little bit of detail just here to give some insight into what the serious game looked like. Well, I'm not going to go into detail. I'm just going to show you some of the images so you know what it was looking like. So we had, it's a live simulation game where players were maintaining a home over time. They were given an avatar that matched the resident type that they identified as at the beginning of the game, where there was a pre-game survey. So whether they were a landlord, a tenant, a renter, or if they had a kind of a dual resident type. And then they moved the avatar through the virtual home, and they had to do a series of things. And they had 3 gauges that showed the consequences of your actions. There was one about comfort, there was one about environmental impact on kilowatts of energy use, and then there was monthly budget. For those people who aren't necessarily the most energy literate, and I would even count myself as that, to not know what a kilowatt of energy is or what it costs. So this is what it kind of looked like. If you're into serious games, it'll look fairly standard. If you're not a gamer, it might all look very complicated. We did have a tutorial for people to go through it. Recruitment was conducted between April and September of 2023. Obviously, we went through all the ethical approval and all. And there was a pre-game survey. This is the critical thing in terms of our research and getting findings. So this was a serious game that people would play, and they needed to get something out of. And we'll go into that in a little bit of detail. But the most important thing for us was to get data. This is a piece of research. So we had an environmental literacy measure. We had a financial literacy measure. And obviously, these are topics that are maybe more relevant to economics, but we did have an economics input from the consortium. And these are key topics within energy efficiency, behavioral change kind of initiatives. We asked about people's household type and then socio-demographic factors, age, household income, country of residence, etc. And the serious game procedure was like this, where there's the game setup. So pre-game survey, build your home, and then you do a tutorial. Then you're maintaining your home. Once you're in gameplay, you're maintaining your home and an appliance breaks. And at that point, you're presented with a stated preference experiment. And you've got choice 1, and we'll go into that in a little bit. Then you've got another choice, a stated preference with more salient financial information. Then you've got choice 3, which is a discrete choice experiment. Here, we're looking at willingness to pay for repair and looking at expected cost to run the condition, the control condition, expected appliance lifetime condition, and then an environmental framing condition. Then we've got some information and feedback, and that's the end of the game. Okay, so this is what the tutorial looks like. It walks you through the house, shows you what the things are, gets you to do things. We also had at the bottom there, you can see quests. So we kind of directed people to do actions so that they became familiar with the game. The game lasts about 10 minutes, total about 30 minutes, filling in the surveys and everything as well. So here's the choice experiment. So if you look at while I'm talking, if you look at the images on the right, it's probably easier. They're the red boxes. So here you get information that an appliance is broken with an exclamation mark. And then a repair person arrives and a negotiation begins. And they present you with a choice. So you can either repair, okay, or you can replace with an identical device, which is D, okay, so D, a D category appliance. You can replace with an identical appliance. So you can replace with an appliance with a more efficient energy rating, or you can replace with an appliance with a lower energy rating. You make your choice there, and then you get choice 2. And this is where they say, are you sure you want to keep your choice and stay with that choice? Because this is more information about the monthly cost to run. And so we examine that. And then we ask about willingness to pay. And this is determined using a discrete choice approach. And players who chose to repair at choice 2, so at choice 2, they said, I will repair. They'll be presented with increasingly expensive repairs by the repair person. And they must determine whether they would like to continue to repair or switch to a replacement. So there we're examining their willingness to pay for repair. And then for players who select a replacement at choice 2, the cost to repair is reduced by the repair person to establish the cost at which the player would be willing to repair. So we're trying to figure out how much money are you willing to pay for repair from those two categories of people. We also then had a particular focus on the, and this is a term from economics, split incentives. So in landlord and tenant situations, the landlord buys the machine and you as the tenant, you pay for its upkeep. So there's a split incentive there because there's a lack of fair distribution of the financial obligation, let's say, because you as a tenant want a more efficient machine because your bills will be lower on a monthly basis, but that might cost more. So it's imperfect, let's say. So we also teased apart that kind of thing, and I'm not going to go into any more detail about that. To try and give something back to the people playing the serious game, we had pop-up messages which gave insights. So we had things like saying, well done choosing a repair. This is the most environmental and financially kind of sustainable, as your appliance is only 2 years old. We also gave information about where when you might want to think at the bottom there, how long have you had your appliance? If it's less than 10 years, you likely would save money by choosing to repair. How many times have you had to fix it before? So just kind of hints for people to take home with them, to give them something back for having given us data. Okay, I hope you're not all too confused, but now I'm going to go into some of the findings once we've looked at how we organize things. And here there is a QR code to the paper with the details of the findings as well. And this is a paper that we published in Energy Reports earlier this year. And hopefully in the chat, you will also have the link. I'm not going to go into the study again. It was an updated version of what we did for the usability, but a similar thing, a game setup and a pre-game survey, gameplay, and then exiting the game. So we managed to get 1,056 participants. They had a mean age of just over 30 years. So we had a lot of under 30 respondents, but we had respondents from all different age categories. We had a distribution which was quite good across Europe because we had countries from the south of Europe, which is kind of one energy market, maybe more towards air conditioning in the summertime, and then also in Northern Europe, Estonia, Sweden, Finland, who would have more energy kind of consumption in wintertime and a different kind of profile, let's say. So that was good. And if we look at the demographics, the majority of participants were either homeowners or tenants in the first bar chart there. And the second one, participants were primarily in the lower income brackets. So majority in below 25,000 euro a year and between 25 and 50. We had and consequently, we had a large proportion of participants in part-time employment and also job seeking and retired. So I'm going to go into a little bit of detail. If you want more detail on the findings, you'll find it in the paper and you can also reach out to me. But I just wanted to go into some of the main findings. And there's 5 kind of categories of main findings here. The first one are general trends in appliance repair decisions. So what we found was that there was an overall willingness to repair broken home appliances. So that was good. People wanted to repair. They were willing to repair their appliances. And the majority, for those people who chose replacement, the majority opted for premature replacement with more efficient models. And by premature replacement, we mean under, if it's from 8 years under 8 years old. Sorry. And that's premature replacement. And when people opted to do that, they chose a more efficient model. So even let's call it the unsustainable behavior had a kind of an element of sustainability. In terms of demographics, how did that impact decision making? Well, we found that participants over 51 years age were less likely to choose a repair. So older people were more likely to choose a replacement. They were less likely to choose repair. And non-full-time employees, so people who were in part-time employment or students, they were more likely to opt for repair. Okay, so if you're getting confused or thinking this is complicated, it is complicated, and that's what we wanted to tease out. What's the lay of the land of the complication? The impact of literacy, so either financial or environmental literacy on decisions, we actually found a limited overall impact there. So that wasn't having much of an impact at all. But financial knowledge, environmental knowledge, and skills were positively associated with the willingness to pay for repair. So let's say the plot is thickening. And in terms of repair willingness in rental properties, tenants were willing to pay 34 to 71% more than homeowners for repairs. So tenants were very willing to pay for repairs. And landlords were willing to pay 93 to 108% more than homeowners, depending on the appliance, for repair. In terms of financial incentives in rental decisions, 86% of landlords were open to accepting a fee from tenants for more efficient appliances. So as part of that negotiation between landlords and tenants, the tenant was able to offer the landlord a percentage fee or a percentage of the price of the machine to the landlord for a more efficient appliance. And 86% of landlords were open to accepting that. But 65% of tenants were unwilling to pay additional fees for energy upgrades. So tenants were not too interested in it, but landlords were, which is surprising. I mean, I'm not going to go through these because it's too much detail, but I will go into it a little bit. There was a significant difference for country of residence and household income. So obviously that has a factor on whether people have environmental attitudes. In terms of financial literacy and decision making, knowledge and financial knowledge was a key kind of factor there. In terms of behavioral insights, environmental knowledge and skills were linked to higher willingness to pay for repair. This is an interesting one in terms of demographic variations, actually. Older adults show higher environmental action. So they will engage in more environmental or pro-environmental behaviors, whereas younger adults display high climate concern, but lower engagement in proactive environmental behaviors due to climate anxiety. And so, I mean, just on a very anecdotal evidence, this might, to me, it might explain a perplexing situation of, young people being very concerned about climate change and all the rest, but going around with disposable vapes and disposing of them and just getting rid of them and contributing to plastic waste. So there's something there. Policy recommendations. So the kind of key thing for us was interventions to enhance environmental skills among younger and financially less literate populations. So if I can summarize it all in 2 points, the implications of our study are that it highlights the complexities in environmental and financial decision-making processes. It's not at all simple and it's not at all straightforward. There are gains to be made at a European level in terms of our energy consumption in households. So we need probably more studies, more research into how environmental attitudes vary across different types of energy decisions and the potential policy interventions that can help bridge the gap in environmental action. Because that's a key thing, is that people might have an attitude about environmental behavior and pro-environmental activities, but they don't necessarily follow through. So there's a gap there, particularly among diverse demographic groups. So there probably needs to be more tailoring for different demographic groups. We did do a follow-up survey of the people who completed the serious game. And that was to look at, were people able to take anything from the serious game and use it in real life? 521 of the 1,056 or whatever it was, participants agreed to be recontacted. And of them, I think we got something like 227 responses received, and the analysis is underway, and we hope to publish that. As you know, to contribute to the knowledge about the use of serious games for energy efficiency, they're quite popular. It's a big thing, so we want to be able to see, there's no literature, or there's no research on that. There's no findings on whether it actually transfers to the real world. We did come up with some policy actions and policy recommendations. There were three. So one was turning attitudes into actions. The second one was enhancing financial literacy to promote sustainable appliance decisions. And the third one was tailoring financial education to influence sustainable appliance choices. And I mean, what's interesting about this is, even at the final review with the Commission, they were very deliberate in what they wanted from us. They wanted policy documents that they could pass up the chain of command. And that was kind of very interesting. And it might have been extra work for us at the end of the project, but it meant that we were whispering in the ear of people who were making decisions about policy, and they were interested in what we found. So that was very heartening to see. You can find more information here about the way we came up with our kind of policy actions. Were we looked at the key findings from our research, summarized them as research inputs, and then came up with the policy recommendations and kind of a conclusion. So I'm just going to go through the conclusion, because I know I'm 42 seconds over time already. And you can find out more detail by looking at the slides, and you won't find the information about the policies in the paper. We need to publish this separately. But here, the kind of key focus was the importance of focusing on actual pro-environmental behaviors rather than attitudes alone. Okay, that was the key focus of policy recommendation there. And in terms of enhancing financial literacy, we're talking about financial knowledge in promoting sustainable appliance decisions. People sometimes get very complicated, they get very confused with complicated information about what a kilowatt hour is. How much is this machine going to cost me compared to the other one? How can I calculate the difference between a €400 machine that uses this amount of kilowatt hours per cycle and a €200 machine that uses the other? We need to help people. We can't be forcing them to calculate this, and particularly with community groups, schools and universities and young people, it's a big requirement there. And then we're talking about, it's tied into this financial education, so tailoring financial knowledge to influence sustainable appliance decisions, particularly around incentives, tax rebates, and raising awareness to reach target demographics. And all of this is leading up to the latest directive on energy efficiency, which has just been updated. So the one which informed the research topic and the funding that was available for our project has been updated, and they've raised the energy efficiency target to ensure an additional 11.7% reduction in energy consumption by 2030. So they've tightened the screws, let's put it like that, about energy efficiency. And they're focusing a lot on energy poverty and consumers. And this revised directive puts a stronger focus on alleviating energy poverty. And so these new rules must be transposed into national law by 2025. So this time next year, they will be enforced across the EU. And here it's about empowering consumers through stronger requirements for EU countries to raise awareness and provide information on energy efficiency. And it emphasizes the creation of one-stop shops, technical and financial advice and consumer protection, including, but not limited to, out-of-court mechanisms for the settlement of disputes. So all of this is kind of, it's heartening to see as well, because it's exactly what we were finding from our research. I'm not by any means suggesting that our findings informed this. They were happening at the same time. But it's good to see that policy and directives with teeth, which will be transposed into national law, are moving in exactly the same direction around focusing on technical and financial advice, making it easier for people to make the right decisions, because they do generally want to. They don't want the world to burn or flood or anything like that. And we need to raise awareness and provide information. So that's what we did in one of two use cases that we were leading in the Evident project. My email address is there, and I'm happy to accept questions.
Super. Thank you,